Well, hey, Movement Middle, it is great to see you. I'm glad that you are about to watch this video. However, I also want to encourage you, if you can, be here for our Sunday service at either 10 o'clock or 11:30. We're going to have a great time each and every single Sunday. We've got small groups, we've got games ready for you to play, and people ready to get to know you and for you to get to know other people too. So please come hang out with us at either 10 a.m. or 11:30, like I said before, right in room 405. We can't wait to see you there. What is up, Movement? My name is Sam, and we're in week 3 of our series called This or That. And today we're going to be addressing the question, what now? So I'm a Christian, what now? What do I do now? Jesus is in my heart. I've been to church. What do I do now? What does living the Christian life actually look like? This is a huge question in our day and age, and we're going to get to the bottom of it. During our series called This or That, we've been understanding that the things that are true of Jesus are now true of us. And what the Bible likes to talk about when we enter into the family of God is that we've been adopted. We've been adopted into the family of God. To paraphrase a great writer, Henry Nouwen, he likes to say that the moment that we've accepted Jesus into our heart is the moment when we accept the call to become who we really are. In other words, we don't have to earn our family status. We get full rights at the table to sit down, have dinner, and enjoy our family status. But it also comes with the ability to be saved for something, not just from something. So that's what we're going to look at today. We're going to look at what it means to be adopted into the family of God. And there was this thing that happened when my grandpa was growing up, and it was the Great Depression. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. He wasn't depressed, although he had every right to be. What I'm getting at is that the stock market crashed in 1929. So that meant that a lot of people were out of jobs, including his dad. He was about 11 or 12 years old, and they lost their house. Now what happened is they ended up in a hotel basement. And this basement was not a nice basement. It was cold, it was dark, it was rainy, it was wet. Besides that, it was full of rats. Y'all, I don't mess with rats. I don't like them, I never have, and I never will. So what happened is my grandpa, he was 11 years old, and he would go out looking for work with his brothers and his father. They would try and earn enough money to buy food and take it back to the basement where their mother was. Now, the reason their mother wasn't out looking for work either was because she was blind. So imagine this for just a second. Get in this headspace with me. You're 11 or 12 years old. Your dad just lost his job. You're out of your house. You're in an old hotel basement. There's rats there, and your mom's blind. So instead of going to sleep, what he would do all night long is stay up beside her and fend off the rats so that she didn't get bit by the rats. Now, when I think about this, it brings me incredible strength. Why? Because there's some times in my life where I go, maybe I don't have enough. Maybe I don't have what it takes. Maybe I'm just not smart enough. Maybe I'm too weak. And whenever I start to think about that, I try to remember what my grandpa did for his mom. I try to remember that because it brings me such strength to know that, hey, Jesus lives in my heart, and my grandpa lives in my bones. I was coming from a long, long line of people who survived, who thrived, who made it through difficult scenarios. And if he can do it, I can do it. And I understand some of us might not know our family history. It just is what it is. But I want to let you know today that if you're in the family of God, you've been saved into, welcomed into, adopted into a spiritual family. And when we read the Bible, that's what we do. We get to reflect on the previous victories of our spiritual fathers, mothers, grandmas, grandpas, aunts, uncles, and cousins. That's what we're doing when we're reading the Bible. We're not just reading some good stories that have some good tips, but we're reading about our founding fathers and mothers of our faith. So that's what we're going to do in Hebrews chapter 11. Keep in mind as we're reading this that I want us to, every time it says faith, think of the word trust. Okay, here we go. Hebrews chapter 11. It says, the act of faith is what distinguished our ancestors and set them above the crowd. Y'all want to be leaders? It's the act of faith that will set you above the crowd. Not your hair, not your pretty eyes, not your good looks, not your GPA, not your ability to impress other people, not your winning personality, not your loneliness, not your depression, not your anxiety. That's not what sets you apart. What sets you apart is your faith. That's good news. Let's keep reading. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 7, it says, by faith Noah built a ship in the middle of dry land. He was warned about something he couldn't see and acted on what he was told. The result? His family was saved. By an act of faith, Abraham said yes to God's call to travel to an unknown place that would become his home. By faith, think trust, Israel walked through the Red Sea on dry ground. The Egyptians tried it, and they drowned. Here's the reality. There are certain things in life that we are only going to make it through by faith in Jesus, by trust in His ability, not our own. That's what the writer of Hebrews is trying to communicate here. Verse 31, by an act of faith, Rahab welcomed the spies and escaped the destruction that was coming to those who refused to trust God. Here's what I'm saying. Now that we're in the life of a Christian, now that we've accepted Jesus into our heart, now that we're around church and around other believers, we're not saved to sit around. We're saved for a life of action. Think back to every one of those verses. All of them had action, right? It says that Noah built. It says that Abraham went. It says that Rahab welcomed. It says that Israel walked. Those are all action words, y'all. If we think that we were saved to come to church, sit down, and walk out, we got it all wrong. We got it all wrong. But when we understand this correctly, we have it right when we go, wait a second, I was saved not from something to be sitting around. I was saved for something. Make no mistake about it, movement. God has a plan and a purpose for your life. Hebrews 32, it says, through acts of faith, they toppled kingdoms. Maybe some of y'all feel like you have kingdoms set up in your heart that need to be toppled. It says they made justice work. They took the promises of God for themselves. They were protected from lions, from fires, from sword thrusts. They turned disadvantage into advantage. They won battles and routed armies. Y'all, if that doesn't get you pumped up, nothing will. Listen to this. Maybe some of y'all feel like you have a kingdom of depression set up in your heart. You were called to topple that kingdom. What's true of Jesus is now true of you. Jesus lives in your heart, and the writers of the Bible live in your bones. This is your heritage that you're reading about. This isn't just a good story. When you feel like anxiety is a fire that comes against you, when you feel like anger is a fire that comes into your heart and you can feel it in your gut and you go, I just got to respond out of anger, you can look back and go, that's not the way my spiritual grandma responded. That's not the way my heritage responded. What's true of Jesus is now true of me. I wasn't saved from something for nothing. I was saved from me for something. God has a purpose and a plan for my life. There's this cool story that I'd like to tell you here really, really quick. At the end of our message, as we wrap up, I was in small groups a few weeks ago, and one of our students said, hey, I found the cure to loneliness. And I was like, okay, what do you mean? He's like, when I'm at lunch, I give away my ramen. Now I have a ton of friends. I give away my lunch. What did he understand? He understood that because he had something, he was able to give it away. He understood that faith was saying, if I do this, God's going to bless me with friends. If I act, there's going to be a reaction. And that's the thing that we don't connect most of the time, is that faith comes from action. Just like Abraham went, just like Noah built, just like Rahab welcomed, we are called to action. Thank goodness we're called to action. We don't just have to wait around for heaven. So here's what we're going to do. Remember the question up at the top? What do we do now? Now we take a step. We take a step in faith, in trust that Jesus will be there to back it up. Israel walked through the Red Sea. We might have to walk into class. Israel walked through the Red Sea. We might have to walk out of our room into our family dinner, and it might feel really, really awkward. But faith says, Jesus will be there for me. Faith says, I'll have the ability to say what you want me to say. Faith says, I'll have the ability to speak peace instead of anger. Faith says, I have the ability to not worry about what other people think, but understand that the truest thing about me is what Jesus has done, not what I think about me, not the negative thoughts that come against me. So here's what I want us to do. Take a step in faith this week. this week, that we would show up to church expecting to make friends, that we would show up to church expecting to be a good friend, that we would show up to school the same way, even if it's over Zoom, that we would show up to church expecting to hear from God, not just from Sam or whoever else is on stage, but we would expect to hear a word from our Heavenly Father, straight from our heritage. Because Jesus lives in our hearts, and our spiritual grandfathers and grandmothers and cousins, aunts, uncles, moms and dads live in our bones. We have what it takes, not because we're so cool, not because we're so great, but because Jesus is so great, because God is so strong. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to show up to our Bible reading plan expecting to hear from God. We're going to show up to our school expecting, looking for the opportunity to tell fellow students, other classmates, teachers about how amazing it is to be adopted into the family of God, that we don't got to earn it. We just get to enjoy it. And it's then that we start to understand what it's actually like to not have to earn our identity, but rather that we get to embrace the call to become who we actually are. Movement, I've enjoyed our series called This or That. I really have. I've enjoyed learning with you that the truest thing about Jesus is now the truest thing about us, that we don't have to earn our identity, that we now get to enjoy it. We don't have to live for the approval of others, but we get to live from the approval of God. And I just want to invite you out really quick to Sonic this Thursday at 6:30. We are all going to be hanging out there. All of our Next Gen staff, all of our dream team, all of our students. So I would love it if you would join us there. Don't forget, like we said up at the top of the video, make sure if you can, if you're comfortable with it, to make it out to Movement in room 405 at 10 o'clock or 11:30. Bring a friend. I'll see you there.